to have Dame Carol Kidu, who's here as our guest speaker tonight. So could we give her a round of applause? Yeah, so without further ado, I just would like to, just give a brief introduction of Dame Kidu. She is someone that doesn't need any introduction. Because like me, I admire her a lot for what she's done for women in PNG politics especially, and in the Pacific. So as we've been already introduced by our MC, she briefly said that Dame Carol Kidu was an opposition leader and a female one at it, and she's been the first at bat. But I'd like to say that she's served in PNG politics for the last 15 years, since 1997 to 2012. So that's 15 years, and she's done a lot for, in the capacity that she has been as the member for Moresby South, but also as, someone who spearheaded and put forward the importance of having more women in politics. So we're very honored tonight to have her, and I won't take up more time because we'd really like to hear what she has to say, right? Yeah, so I'll just have Dame Carol Kidu speak a little bit, and then I'll take questions as the moderator.
I saw the questions you wanted to ask about my experience in politics. I think perhaps I'll start by talking about the situation for women in politics according to our constitution. The constitution is our mama law, not our papa law, it's our mama law, the most powerful law of the country, and our constitution is very clear. Is it coming through? Put your hand up if you can hear me. Okay, our constitution is very clear. We have our National Goals Directive Principle. National Goal 2 is on equality and participation. National Goal 2, Directive Principle 5 is very clear about the fact that women should have equal opportunities to be involved in all parts of life, political, social, economic, and religious areas of life. Are you all familiar with the constitutional provisions? Yeah, put your hand up if you know what our constitution says. Wow, you have to start looking at our constitution. The preamble is brilliant. Our constitution is very clear about equality for women to have participation. If you go to section 50 of our constitution, it actually talks about equal opportunity for women to take part in all forms of political life in Papua New Guinea, section 50 of the Constitution. And I used to always say to my colleagues in Parliament, it's okay to say that women have equal opportunity to stand, but do women have equal opportunity to win? And we all know the answer to that. Women do not have equal opportunity to win in politics in Papua New Guinea. And it's not because men are better than women or women are better than men. It's just so many factors go against women trying to go into politics in Papua New Guinea. It's a democracy, but we're not a representative democracy in Papua New Guinea if half the population have no representatives on the floor. By the same token, if 10% of the population, our disabled people with various forms of disability, have no voice on the floor, I don't think we are a representative democracy, and we want to be a representative democracy. So there is a big task ahead of us, and you are extremely important as young people, young men especially, and young women, to understand that it is extremely important to have women in decision making. You might know that the Chancellor, the Prime Minister of Germany has just retired from her political career as the equivalent of the Prime Minister. She was a brilliant leader. And we have many Papua New Guinean women who can be brilliant leaders, the same as brilliant male leaders. And it's just ridiculous to waste all that capability. So that's the first thing. Our constitution is very clear, and our constitution allows for nominated seats, but we've never been able to get enough women on the floor of Parliament to be a critical mass. I was there most of my time. For the first 5 years, there was Dame Josephina Bijah and myself. Then for the last 10 years, I was there by myself. One person, one woman on the floor of Parliament is not enough. And that's why after 2007 campaign, when I won, I truly thought there would be women on the floor with me, because we changed from our first past the post to limited preferential, and I thought that would help women come onto the floor. But it didn't. It had some positive effects in politics, but it didn't help women come on the floor because I was there by myself. And that's why I decided to do a huge amount of lobbying to try to get women on the floor. Now, I don't know, you wanted to know about my political career. I'll just finish what I'm talking about first. Is that okay? Hands up if it's okay. And am I speaking too fast? Hands up if I'm speaking too fast. It's okay? Sometimes when I get excited, I go crazy. Okay. During that night, 2007 to 2015 to 2012, when I retired by choice, I always said when I won in 1997 that I would do 3 terms if the people of Moresby South would let me, and then I would retire. I didn't want to stay in more than 15 years. I think we do what we can, and then we should move on quite often. And when I found I was the only woman there again, and being a naturalized citizen, I was not an Indigenous woman of Papua New Guinea, I hated the image. We need Indigenous women on the floor of Parliament. And so we tried 2 things. Not me, I didn't do it. It was a huge lobbying force, National Council of Women, Women in Politics, Business and Professional Women. Many, many groups worked on this effort we put in those 5 years to try to get women on the floor. The first thing, we started on working on reserve seats, as you probably know. And there's good things about reserve seats, and there's also bad things. But as you know, in Bougainville, we do have reserve seats for 3 women. And in the last Bougainville election, we have 3 women, plus we have Honourable Theonila, who won against the men. She stood against men and she won. So we have 4 women in Bougainville. We know that in our Motukweta Assembly, I passed that legislation, worked with the Motukweta Assembly to pass the legislation. We have two seats for women in the Motukweta Assembly. In our constitution, section 102 allows for elected people and nominated people. There is a provision for 3 nominated people. It's never been used yet in Papua New Guinea. Twice before me, 2 male MPs tried to use that provision to nominate a woman to Parliament, but they did not succeed. We put a big process in place to try to put 3 women. We put out expressions of interest, and it was like applying for a job. And we got in 78 applications to become nominated women of Parliament. From that, I didn't get involved at all. From that, we had a human resource company sorted them all. And then we had a panel of women from all sorts of organizations in Papua New Guinea, 12 women, not just political organizations. We had Professor Betty Lovai from the UPNG. She was on this panel, and if you wanted, you could ask her about it. She was part of this panel. And this panel of women looked at the 78 applications. I never saw them because I didn't want any political interference. And from that 78 applications, they took it down to 12 for interview. One of the women was overseas at the time of the interview, so it ended that 11 women were interviewed, and they took that down to 6. And out of the 6, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition were meant to choose 3 that they were both comfortable with to bring onto the floor under Section 102. Politics is a very funny game. I had actually a letter from the Leader of the Opposition at the time stating that they would support this. And it was just the night before the vote that they pulled the plug on us. And so when we went and had the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition went to look at these 6 names, he informed us that they had decided that they were not going to support it. So that was very disappointing because we could have had 3 women on there by like applying for a job. It wasn't that they were going to get in there easily. They were well-qualified women. But when it came to it, once the opposition put their numbers out, we didn't have enough numbers because we needed an absolute majority to get it through. So that failed. It's still there. Any Prime Minister now could use that provision to bring some women onto the floor of Parliament if they were really committed to having women on the floor of Parliament. It's there, the provision exists. At the same time, we were working on the reserve seat one. It was always going to be difficult. We were working to have it had to be by election, so we had to have electoral boundary. So we chose the provincial seats, the equivalent, so that there would be a governor and then a woman. It was a difficult one because to have an election, you have to have a boundary. It was very difficult, and there were things against it, but we did work really hard on it. Women did a roadshow around the country. There was lots and lots of awareness. A huge amount of awareness was done. We prepared folders for all the members of Parliament, and every member of Parliament got a folder about what we were doing. We had support letters from all sorts of women's organisations, from the churches, from overseas. So we had lots and lots of stuff in the folders for the men. When it came to vote, the first section was to get change, to make a provision in the Constitution for a special provision for reserved seats. So it added to Section 101, it added a provision number D for special seats, reserved seats for women, as defined by the organic law. Right? Now that got passed on the floor of Parliament. It only required a simple majority. Women were rejoicing. They thought it was finished. And that provision still exists in our Constitution. It was passed. Section 101D says that there shall be special reserved seats for women as defined by the organic law. The organic law that was supposed to be passed was that those seats would be the provincial boundaries. And so there would be 22 seats. Then 2011, as you know, there was a overthrow of government when Sir Michael was in Singapore. The late Sir Michael was in Singapore in hospital, and Honourable Peter O'Neill took over the leadership of the government. And so Sir Michael's side were boycotting. I didn't boycott because I was still running this legislation, so I just sat in the middle benches until I became leader of the opposition of 2 people, which was a crazy situation. When it came to trying to pass the organic law, we didn't get the numbers. So the second stage didn't pass. So again, that provision still exists in our Constitution. Any committed Prime Minister or ministers could use that provision, Section 101D, which allows for special seats as defined by the organic law. Now that's what they're working on at present, I believe, but they're going to make it 5 seats at regional level. That's, I think, that they're working on. Whether it'll get passed or not for 2022, I don't know. But we don't want another term of Parliament with 0 women on the floor. So if any of you want to do some lobbying, please do some lobbying for Parliament to complete that work. I know they're working on it, and to get it passed to allow for 5 women from regional level. And they would have to have a lot of help from parties, because it's very impossible for a woman to campaign over a whole region. And so the parties would put forward the women. Okay, so the positions are there. Now, how did I end up in politics? Please stop me when it's time for questions. To be honest, I never voted until I voted for myself. As you would all know, my late husband was the Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea. And as the Chief Justice, he made a conscious decision not to vote in elections because he didn't want to be at all political. So we never voted because he just didn't want to be political at all. He was very strong on the independence of the judiciary. So I had actually never voted. I knew nothing about politics. But when my husband died in 1990, in early 1994, after he had not been reappointed as Chief Justice, a lot of people were coming to him wanting him to stand for politics. And he used to say to them, wait 6 months, come back to me, and then I'll give you an answer. He never answered people whether he would stand or not. Almost 6 months to the day, he died of a sudden heart attack. And I guess I was extremely angry. I was angry that I felt it was very unfair because he would have been an excellent politician, but the opportunity was not there. And so I stood because of that. I knew nothing about politics. I was a teacher by profession. I stood, but if you think about it, I had a big advantage. I was the widow, a fairly recent widow of the late Chief Justice, who had been very highly respected for his work. And so I had what you would call the sympathy vote. There was a sympathy vote came in there that helped me to win that first election in 1997. I worked very hard. I campaigned very, very hard. I had a superb campaign team, but the sympathy vote was a big push for me to get into politics. And so there's no doubt about that. Being Buri's widow helped me to get into politics, but it was then up to me to kind of prove myself. My biggest interest in politics was to be a parliamentarian. I tried to do as much as I could for the electorate in terms of social development, like preschool work, Guinea Goada, setting up training for young people. I wasn't a projects type lady. And I never ever, and I'm very proud of this, I never had my name put on anything because it was not my money. It was the people's money. And each second year, Moresby South would give vehicles to the police. And they wanted to put in on it donated by Dame Carol Kidu, member for Moresby South. And I said, no, if you do that, I won't release the funds won't be released. I said, it is not my money. If you put something on, put in donated by the people of Moresby South, because I feel it's a very important thing that members should separate themselves from that money. It is not their money. It is the money that belongs to the state of Papua New Guinea and the people of Papua New Guinea. So I focus a lot on policy and parliamentary things, and at the electorate level, I focus not on projects so much, but on programs like early childhood, skills training for youth and women, HIV work and things of that nature. And I think it was that working with the people at grassroots level, like preschools and things, that helped me to win again, and then to win again 2 times. Perhaps too, people were aware of the policy work I was doing. I think some of them were. They did know the policy work, particularly being urban people. They're aware that the real job of a politician is policy and legislation. And I did a lot of work in legislative reform to do with violence against women, to do with rape. All of those areas of legislation were amended during my time. The Lookout in Piccaninny Act was done during my time. The disability policies, the early childhood policies, and I focus a lot on policies. Some of them have never been implemented, but at least they're there, and maybe one day they'll get implemented. So do you want to do any questions yet? There's nothing special about me. I got in because of a sympathy vote, and then I worked really, really hard to stay in. But it was a sympathy vote got me in. And I want all of you to be champions for women in politics. We need women in Parliament.
Don?
During your time as a female member of the Parliament, what was the main challenge for you as a member? Thank you.
Main challenge as a female. I guess in some ways the challenge is that as a female, especially only female there, you're kind of isolated. Yeah, when you're in NEC and in the cabinet and the ministers, you're part of all of that, but you are kind of isolated from some of the things that are going on. And I probably preferred to be isolated, but sometimes it means you're not really clear of the games behind the games. Politics is played on many levels, and I was never involved in the inner circles, although people probably thought I was. I kept myself out of the inner circles and just focused on my work. I didn't particularly want to be inside the inner circles because you hear things that perhaps you don't want to hear. Some of the things that kind of go wrong in politics in every country of the world, not just Papua New Guinea. And so I preferred to just focus on my ministry and the things in my ministry and work on that. I will say here that I was very grateful to Sir Michael Somare, the late Sir Michael, because he gave me the opportunity to serve as a minister. And in politics, actually, to become a minister, your party should have, if they have 3 members on the floor, 3 members gives 1 ministry. 6 members gives 2 ministries. Right? 9 ministers give your party 3 ministries. That's how it's done. It's not all about who's the best person to do the job. It's about the numbers game of politics and whatever numbers the coalition brought. Now, in 2007, I was part of Melanesian Alliance. I was not part of Sir Michael's party. I was part of Melanesian Alliance. We had only 3 members. And so we should have only got 1 ministry. But Sir Moy Ave was a more senior politician than me, and he became Deputy Prime Minister, and he also had a senior ministry. But Sir Michael also gave me a ministry. I can tell you there were many men objecting because they said they don't have enough numbers. She should not have a ministry. Sir Michael stood completely firm. He said, I'm sorry, gentlemen, it is not negotiable. She will be in my cabinet. And if you think about it, Sir Michael appointed the first female minister of Papua New Guinea, the late Naharuni. He was very quietly, very, very, very supportive of women. And the same in 2002, that was, and then in 2007, exactly the same. I was the only person from Melanesian Alliance who won. I was just one person party, but he still gave me a ministry, even though we didn't have the numbers. So I'm very grateful because Sir Michael was very proactive and gave me the opportunity to do the work I did in the ministry that I had. And I always acknowledge him for that. Because if you're not in a ministry, there's not much opportunity to change policy and legislation.
What would be the main blockage for the indigenous female Papua New Guineans to become a parliamentarian?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Excellent question. It's a huge question, and there's been a lot of writing done about it. Number one, it's nothing to do with the capability of women, Indigenous women. They are capable of being very good politicians. But it's more to do with the mindset in communities and things like that, that the communities in general don't see women, politics as something for women. They don't see it as a suitable place for women. They see politics as being for men. Because traditionally it was mainly men who went out and did the speeches, did the public distributions in feasts and bride prices and things. But we all know that behind the scenes, the women had a lot of influence. And we still haven't got communities to make that mindset change that it's okay for women to be in the public sphere as leaders as well. And it's a community that votes. So I believe in our push towards getting women into politics. Yeah, we can try for all these reserve seats and things as well. But I think it's really important that people like yourself go back to your communities and try to influence the mindset of the community. You know very well that in your own communities, many women are great leaders in their communities. And just the same, they can be great leaders in Papua New Guinea. And it's up to changing that mindset, because it's the people who vote. And I really think it's the mindset is a big problem. The other big problem is that politics has very sadly gone to money politics in Papua New Guinea. When I stood in 1997, money politics wasn't very strong. By the time I did my last campaign in 2007, I had to fundraise a lot of money. And even then it wasn't enough to try to run the campaign. And that's not bribe money, not giving out money. And we all know that there's a lot of money played in the political game in Papua New Guinea. It's illegal, but it happens. And so that is a very hard thing for women too. Most women don't have that type of financial backup to run a campaign. Papua New Guinea is a very hard country to campaign in, trying to get all around your electorate. Again, I was very lucky. I was in Moresby South. I could drive around my whole electorate in one day. Whereas a woman who's standing in a remote rural area, it's very, very hard for her to get around to her communities. And so she needs to be able to partner perhaps with males, get other people, how she can get around to actually campaign. So the money factor is a very hard factor for women in politics. There's big money played. Another factor is that parties don't like to endorse women usually. Parties want to endorse winners because that gets them into the chance of being prime minister. If they get enough people, they'll become the prime minister. They can become the prime minister, the party leader, if they get enough people in. And so they often don't want to endorse women because they feel that women are not winners. And so there is legislative reform happening at present. You might know about it. Again, you could lobby for this. Dr. Alphonse Gelu is very strong in his work with the Political Party Integrity Commission, and they're putting through a legislation that all parties must endorse at least 20% females. It hasn't been passed yet. I hope it will be passed. So the parties, political parties, also take responsibility for trying to get women into politics, because women can do a very good job. Once they're there, they need the backup as well. You know, the backup in there. It's not an easy job. It's actually very hard. And you need to make sure there's enough people there to help them and back them up. I felt when I was in politics, I often wished I'd had a big research team around me, but I didn't have it. I had to rely on doing a lot of research myself. So if there's women going in, please, other women and men, help them with the knowledge and the research that they need. Because national politics, they need to understand policies, they need to understand laws and understand what they're going there for. And I'm sure that most of them do know what they're going there for. I knew what I wanted to influence before I went in, and they're the things that I focused on. I didn't do them all, but I got some of them done. Does that help? So number one, please go out to your communities and convince your communities it's okay to vote for women. Convince your women not to vote for money. It doesn't give you the best person necessarily. Convince your people to look at the qualities of the person that is going in, and look at whether they will really care about the people. And don't become part of the money politics.
Question is, you said you were not able to win over your lobby about equality and representation of women in the parliament, which we just reserve seats for the women.
my question is it because of the members, they were not able to understand the constitution, um, about the inequality thing in the constitution, or is it because you were a dual national you were a dual national in the parliament, that kind of like racism in the parliament, that you couldn't able to convince or the members, or what is your view on that, regarding what's the hindrance towards achieving
Yeah.
yeah
Yeah, I
passing
wasn't.
those
Yeah.
the bills that you lobbied for?
Yeah. No, I was a naturalized citizen. Dual citizens cannot stand for parliament. I was a naturalized citizen, and that was to my advantage in many ways. It wasn't racism. Um, in fact, some males used to say to me, and I found this disgraceful, they say to me, "We don't mind you being here, Carol, but we don't want our own women in here." Now, you think about that. That's a terrible statement. They didn't mind me being there, but they didn't want their own women in parliament. I leave you to think about that statement. That was a statement said to me by several members. The actual vote failed in the end because the parliament had fallen apart because of the vote of no confidence against the late Sir Michael by Peter O'Neill. And so there weren't enough members on the floor to pass the organic law. But even if there had been more members on the floor, it would have been a hard vote to get through, because a lot of the men were not comfortable with it, particularly because it was 22 seats. The present work being done is on 5 seats, as I said, 5 regional seats. Now, I think I don't see not passing that law as that it all failed. There was a huge amount of advocacy done, a huge amount of lobbying, and if you think, in 2012, 3 women actually won. After all of that effort and the tidal wave, and there were videos on television about tell your member to vote for the legislation. And as a result of that, 3 women did win because there was enormous lobbying and advocacy and raising of awareness. Now, since then, that lobbying and raising of awareness died away. And then in 2017, those 3 women all lost their seats. And so we've ended up with no women at all in Parliament now. And that's been a sad outcome. We've got to make sure that the same doesn't happen in 2022. I believe there will be some women win in 2022 by the normal process, but I hope there will also be some reserved seats to try to increase the number of women. There's different things going on behind the scenes working with women. COVID has made it very difficult. There was supposed to be a lot of work going on and mentoring and lobbying and working, but because of COVID and the lockdowns and all these things happening, it has made it very difficult to do a lot of awareness. But I do feel that some of the women standing in 2022, I think they're going to make it. And I think they'll be excellent, excellent politicians. So I'm just praying that they do make it. And I'll be back and I'll be campaigning out there with them. In fact, when I can get back there, at present I'm here. I came down because of my mother's health. She died, and tomorrow we're going to be spreading her ashes, which is a Western custom, cremation, and we'll spread her ashes at the favourite fishing place. But I've also kind of got trapped here because the flights are not allowing us back. Plus, I'm getting my vaccinations done before I come back, because I'm in a vulnerable age group now. I'm in my mid-70s. So it's good to get vaccinated before I come back. But once I come back, it'd be great if we can organise a time where we get together in person, maybe down at Tauranga at Tutu, where I live, and let's all have a gathering there. What do you think? Put some sausages on a barbecue and let's be able to talk face to face. That'd be great. Okay. I hope there's some women there in the audience who are interested in going into politics.
Dame Carol, there
Yeah.
should be 2 questions in your chat box, if you check.
Okay. First question, is it possible that our problem be that we have very few people contesting? And do you think, actually the number of women contesting has increased? Every election it has increased, but it is far fewer than men, which is true. And I've been saying to women, if you're interested, just go for it. Put your name in, it doesn't matter win or lose, but just make a very clear statement that women want to be in there. Get people to help you pay your nomination fee, campaign the best you can, don't worry about money, just make that statement, we want to be in there. And I think I would like to see as many as possible contesting so the numbers go up a lot more. And that's what I've been encouraging women to do. I say, if you're interested, just get someone to help you pay your nomination fee and stand so that people can see that women want to be there. And it would probably would increase the odds of winning, the chances. Advice to young women interested in contesting elections, you have to have determination, enormous determination. You have to be willing to diplomatically argue your points, not confrontationally. In Papua New Guinea, I wouldn't do confrontational arguments with men. It's uncomfortable for men, and we know that. But you have to learn how you can diplomatically keep developing your arguments of why you are going there. And it's really important you know what you want to do. Why are you going into politics? You know, what are the things that you want to influence? If you're women, do you want to improve the maternal mortality rate? 5 women will have died in Papua New Guinea today giving birth. Our maternal mortality rate is really high. Do you want to work on that issue and try to improve reproductive health issues for women? Or do you want to work on the economic empowerment of women? Or do you want to work on just women and men issues? And I would say we've got to work on people issues, not just women's issues, because women's issues are family issues, are men's issues. And I think it's important we don't isolate the men and make it a women's thing. We've got to work with men. So I would say very clearly, know clearly what you want to do when you get there, have an idea of what you're going to, study, understand what's going on, and be very determined, but be willing to compromise as well. Not compromise in a bad way, but willing to meet in the middle. And if you're wanting to stand in 2022, you should have already started your work long ago. But if you haven't, we'll get started right now. It takes a long time.
Okay, thank you, Dame, for that. That was very informative and I think thought-provoking for me. I don't know about other students here.
I think
Okay, so we have another question by Kuson Madeline. What would be your personal views on why the 2 female parliamentarians elected in 2012 did not come back in the next term of parliament?
I really can't comment on that. I have not studied the politics of their electorates. I think Honourable Delilah Gore came very close to coming back, and she was only missed out by a very small number of votes. I think Honourable Lujaya and Honourable Julie were further down in the actual placings, but Honourable Delilah Gore was very close, and it was very sad that she did not get back in. I can't comment on why people decided not to vote for them again. It's very hard to maintain your support base, and you've got to really focus on that as well.
Thank you, Dame, for that. I think that Mr. Youngin has written a really good article on that, in that regard.
Good.
So maybe he could just probably share what the title of the article is.
Yeah.
Hi, good night.
Night.
So, the title of the, it's an in brief with ANU. So the title of the in brief is the political leadership of the women parliamentarians and the controversial issues. The controversial issues that the three women faced. Okay. The political leadership of women in parliament, okay, and the three controversies that the three women faced during their term as a member of parliament. So it's online.
Yeah.
So I did a brief, say, sort of desktop and literature review on the issues they faced. And there are three common themes in that in brief. One was their failure to consolidate political power. And the other was these issues, the local issues that they faced in their own electorates. And I think the final one was the complaint of the people in terms of lack of services. What do you think the women getting elected should behave in parliament? Should they be leaning towards the more masculine and big man style of politics, or should they reserve to the role of Melanesian women?
Yeah, I think, I will say, I think what helped me to win and win and win again is that I did see the electorate. I saw people in the electorate as people, and I was mums to all the young men and everyone. They'd call me mums. Mama belong Moresby South and things like that. And it's part of my personality, but I did deliberately cultivate that image. I think it's very important that women portray an image that people expect of them as women. But that can be very demanding on the women because, you know, because they say that, because they see you as a mother, they expect sometimes from you what they shouldn't be expecting from you. You know, providing the rice, providing their daily needs and all of those things. One thing about what I was disappointed when the three women won after 2012 is that they very quickly went into ministries. Now, when I won in 1997, even if I'd been offered a ministry, I would have said no. My first aim was to consolidate my electorate. And I think it's a very important thing for both men and women, but particularly women. First aim is consolidate in your electorate and worry about a ministry when you get back in again. Because once you're a minister, you have to be in Moresby almost every week. You're never back in your electorate hardly, right? Because as a cabinet member, there's always meetings and things. Now there again, if you look at me, it was a big advantage for me. My electorate was in the capital city. And so I could be attending to my ministerial duties after 2002, as well as getting out into my electorate. But I made a deliberate decision in 1997. I had a woman who's a political activist. She was running around trying to lobby for a ministry. And I kept saying to her, look, stop it. You're wasting your time. I'm not interested. I just want to get my electorate sorted first. And I think we've got to be careful about that. I was actually worried when they, you know, they became ministers and things like that, because it takes you away from your electorate, and it's your electorate is going to vote you back or not vote you back. So what I'm saying here is that you have to be very strategic. You've got to think about it all the time. It might sound great to be a minister, but if it takes you away from your electorate, leave it until you have consolidated and you really established yourself in your electorate. And I think that's one of the problems they faced, is that they perhaps did not consolidate in their electorates enough.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We have a question from a young lady here. Peggy, would you like to come ask your question?
So you served from 2002 to 2007 and 2007 to 2012 till you retired from the position. So my question is, what would be, how did you manage to stay within this full term in parliament? How did you manage to get back in parliament? Like, what would be your best advice for it for upcoming ladies who wish to share their interest in politics and try to become a leader? What would be your advice towards us? Thank you. Okay.
My advice is that you have to keep very close to your electorate and your people. In Papua New Guinea, that personal relationship with your electorate is extremely important. And that's a very demanding thing. That's why I wouldn't want to have stood again. I'd always said I'd do 3 terms, that's it. But I was exhausted by the end of it because, you know, I think people expect more from women than from men in some ways and demand more. So my advice is, one, you have to get yourself established and spend your first term getting yourself established with your electorate and then aim to get into a ministry. There are other ways that you can influence policy. Like in my first term, when there was a vote of no confidence and the late Somare Marata became Prime Minister, and I said there was this lady running around trying to lobby for me to be a minister, and I kept saying to her, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I have to get my electorate sorted out first. But I did go and ask, could I chair a parliamentary committee? And I established a parliamentary committee. It was a special parliamentary committee on urbanization and social development. It meant that under that parliamentary committee and chairing that, and I set the terms of reference, and Somare was very happy for me to just go off and do my thing like that. But it meant that I was doing a lot of consultations about urbanization and the issues of urbanization. And then I eventually put my documents to the floor, my things. And so I was being seen and heard in the newspapers without being a minister. You don't always have to be a minister. You've got to work out how you can use the processes of parliament to be seen and heard. And I think people don't do that enough. They just get up in question time, even men too. You don't hear many people putting forward matters of public importance, which I tried to do in my first term, and then trying to really use the committee system. The committee system in Papua New Guinea is not used enough. And so I was getting noticed because I was doing committee work. But at the same time, I could also be in my electorate doing lots of work in my electorate. I wasn't having to go to cabinet meetings. So it's all about being strategic and working out how you can be noticed. You've got to be noticed, but in the right way. I started to do some things that I was not popular for in the end. I left them all till my final term in politics, because I knew they would be very contentious. Things like looking at some of our old 1600s legislation from England that I think needs to go. And it wasn't popular, but I left it till my final term because I knew it would not be popular. And always remember that I did have the advantage of being the widow of the late Sir Kidu. And it meant that the men gave me respect that maybe they do not give to their own women. So I had that enormous advantage of being the widow of a highly respected former Chief Justice. And yeah.
How did you manage to serve 3 full terms? Thank you.
a lot of really hard work. It's not it was a lot of hard work and policy and legislation, but I want to point out there were 3 women straight after independence. There was the late Naharuni, Dame Josephine Abijah, and Waliata Klaus. I think probably not many of you don't even know the name Waliata Klaus. She was a very young woman, and she was a member of parliament straight after, in the first parliament after independence. There were 3 women then. Then it went back to 1 woman, and then it went to 0, 0, and then 2, and then 1, 1, 3, and now 0. So there were 3 women at the very beginning of our nationhood. The late Naharuni, who became the first female minister of Papua New Guinea. A lot of people forget that. The first minister of Papua New Guinea was not me, it was the late Naharuni. She was Minister for Justice, and she was Minister for Civil Aviation and Minister for Forests at one stage.
Thank you so much. We have another question here from a young lady.
Okay, good night, Dame. So I have a question. It's not one that has to do with advice, but it's about a particular legislation. So since you said you've been involved with policy work, did you have a hand or play a part in the recent amendment to the Divorce Act, the 2020 amendment, making women liable to pay 50% of all savings and assets after a divorce if the women are involved in extramarital affairs?
No, I'm not even aware of that legislation, and it's discriminatory. Has it been passed?
Yes, in the papers, they said that they passed. It is an amendment to the Divorce Act.
When was this done? Do you know when it was passed? It wasn't passed when I was there. I would have fought against it. It's discriminatory. And this is why we need women there. That's, as it is now, women miss out most when there's after a breakdown in marriage, often women lose everything. So I'm not even aware of the amendment, and it's disgraceful if it has gone through, and you should be speaking out. And if you can get my email, please, or get your lecturer Michael to send me a copy of this amendment to the Marriage Act. It'll be an amendment to the Marriage Act.
To the
There's no Divorce Act.
Divorce Act.
It'll be an element of the Marriage Act, wouldn't it? Or has it been added to the Marriage Act? Has it been included in the Marriage Act, or is it a separate legislation?
From what I read, it's separate in the Divorce Act, but it could be also part of the Marriage Act.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it, but it's completely wrong. How many extramarital affairs do men have too? Not just women. No, men, I'm sure men in the audience would agree. It's not something that's just, why is it worse for a woman to have an extramarital affair than a man? They're the same. And I don't know, I'd like someone to send me a copy of that. It'd be very interesting to see it. Yeah. Same as I don't, I mean, things like trying to make polygamy illegal. I don't see any point in trying to make polygamy illegal. To make a custom illegal, it won't work. But what we've got to do is have legislation that will protect women from the abuse if polygamy is abused. Because in traditional polygamy, a man had to look after every wife and all the children. And I have no problems with that. That's custom. But when a man dumps first wife and gets another one and dumps another one and gets another one, to me that is wrong. And we have to look at abuse of polygamy, not the custom of polygamy. So there's so many things that need to be looked at, and we'll need women to really get interested and to lobby with men about these things. Yeah. And if the men in Parliament have passed such a legislation, they should be ashamed of themselves. Should be.
All right, so time is catching up with us, and we have only time for 2 more questions. Just one? Okay, Vanua says only 1 question.
Okay.
So,
I have a question regarding you in the parliament. What was the feeling when you first entered the parliament that was dominated by men?
When Dame Josephine and I won in 1997, there had been 10 years, 2 terms of Parliament with 0 women. And so I think initially the men were a little bit uncomfortable, but they were very respectful for both of us, because Dame Josephine is one of our icons from early days, long-term politician. And so the feeling, I think once you win by an elective process, it's accepted by the men. But the disadvantage that women have is that because there are only 1 or 2 women there, they can't form a strong lobby together and work together on issues that are important to women, to family, to men, things of common interest. And so I think that is possibly a problem. I would say that my male colleagues were very supportive of the work I was doing. But if I found some male colleagues, you can tell when you watch a person by their body language, if they're uncomfortable or they don't like it. If I felt that I was talking with someone about something I was trying to do and I could feel that they were uncomfortable, I wouldn't try to push the issue or force the issue. I'd then go to one of my other male colleagues and say, listen, who supported what I was doing. I'd say, listen, you know what I'm working on, and I know that they already supported me. I'd say, do you reckon you can talk to so-and-so who's opposing it? So you strategically have to lobby. It's no, I didn't try to force things onto men or onto women, you know. You've got to learn the strategies of lobbying and using other people to help lobby for you, because sometimes men are very uncomfortable if women have very strong ideas. Am I correct? They become uncomfortable. And so if you take them out of their comfort zone and they feel very uncomfortable, you're not going to make much progress. So it's best to get someone else, one of your male colleagues who is supportive of what you're doing, to go and, you know, chat about it and try to influence people to maybe change their thinking. So again, I'm saying you have to be quite strategic in how you work the politics of politics. When I first went in, I was too aggressive. And Somare and Saburi Kidu, we were all in university together at Queensland University. And Somare said to me, hey, stop talking like that. Stop being like you're a teacher. Later, you might need that person to support something. Don't make them your enemy. And, you know, his advice was very good. I tried to avoid making enemies. I had a policy of friends to all, enemies to none. And if I could tell that some people were not supportive of what I was doing, I would ask other people to try to influence them.
Anything else, maybe some final words you'd like to say before we say goodbye to you? I'd
just say, let's keep in touch. So when I can eventually get back there, when I'm cleared to travel back, and I've finished all I have to do in terms of my mother's death and everything here, let's see if we can have something for those interested. Not everybody, those any interested in digging deeper, both males and females. Let's get together.